Welcome back to Beyond the Uniform. I'm Justin Asiri. Normally each week I interview military veterans about their civilian career. However, today is a special episode where I interview an organization that helps veterans called Breakline.
Aim high. Aim way higher than you think that you should. Because you have so much to offer, and we need your expertise and we need your talent in the private sector, and we'd be lucky to have you. But you've got to go for it. Don't let this be the moment in your life or in your career where you settle. You've got to go for it, and so let this be the time when you really shoot for the stars, because you've earned it. You've earned that opportunity.
Today's episode is somewhat time sensitive. In this episode, we go through an overview of Breakline and how it helps veterans in their job search. But they actually have two amazing upcoming courses that would be very helpful to veterans interested in either technology or finance. And the deadline to apply is December 6th. So don't wait to listen to this episode. Second, although we mostly focus on Breakline, their CEO, Bethany, also oversaw the Stanford Ignite program. Between Breakline and Stanford Ignite, she has tons of great recommendations for veterans. She covers things like resumes, LinkedIn, interviews, and other advice suitable for any veteran. Check out the show notes at beyondtheuniform.io for more information and links to everything we discuss, as well as timestamps in case you'd like to go directly to a specific portion of our interview. So let's dive in to my interview with Bethany Coates at Breakline Education. Well, joining me today in San Francisco is Bethany Coates. Bethany, welcome to Beyond the Uniform.
Justin, thanks so much for having me.
So for listeners, I wanted to give a quick background on Bethany's company, which we'll be talking about today, which is called Breakline Education. And Breakline is an education and employment company that builds an affordable path to compelling careers. Their programs combine skills-based training with professional networking and connect participants directly with hiring managers. Breakline is something that has come up multiple times on this show from other veterans, and so excited to take a deep dive in. And also for some context, I wanted to give background on Bethany. She's the founder and CEO of Breakline. She served previously as the assistant dean at the Stanford Graduate School of Business and has been a consultant at McKinsey and Company. She holds her MBA from Stanford Business School and a BA from Princeton University. So to start things off, Bethany, I know I provided a very brief background on Breakline, but what would you want listeners to know about what you do at Breakline?
So I think the most important aspect of Breakline for your listeners is that this is an opportunity to transition into the next phase of your career in a way that's both affordable but also direct and efficient. We work directly with our industry partners to create our curriculum, and everything that we teach in the program is designed to help our participants make that leap right away. It's really a new take on education, and we stay very focused on our core goal, which is employment and career transition.
It looks like Breakline has been around for about 8 months. How did you go about starting Breakline?
Yeah, so I had been in the higher education sector for about 10 years, and during that time held a bunch of different roles, which helped me figure out both what a world-class education looked like and how to create it from scratch. And at the same time, I observed three really big challenges within the conventional higher education system that I wanted to help solve. And those are, it's become way too expensive. There's not enough accountability in the system. So colleges and universities secure and capture that tuition no matter how their students perform in the marketplace. And then finally, the conventional system is not well suited to high potential people from low income backgrounds. And we can talk about all of those aspects if you're interested. But I observed those challenges and I started percolating on, well, if we were going to design an education for employment opportunity from scratch, what would it look like? And for me, this was about making sure that the tuition to these programs was affordable for everybody. I believe in having skin in the game, which is why we require tuition at all, but we keep our tuition extremely affordable. And then the second thing is that the curriculum itself would really be focused on helping our participants build the skill sets that are required right now by industry. That the whole point of Breakline is to help our students, our participants, add value from day one in their new jobs. And so it was really about observing those challenges and then actually having the expertise to create a new type of experience that would be merit-based and very, very focused on that core goal of career transition.
That's great. I'm trying to remember. I think someone I had on the show, Rayanne Pei, I think that she had gone from the Army and rather than go to business school, she went to tradecraft, which she spoke about briefly. And I remember at the time it kind of sparked this idea that a lot of the traditional academic institutions might not be the most compelling fit for a veteran in terms of the amount of time that it takes, the amount of cost that it has, and that some of it is more academic and theoretical than just directly applicable to what they're going to do. And it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that that's kind of one of the things that you do is just provide a more efficient means to them to learn and network directly in a direction in which they want to go for their career.
That's exactly right. I mean, what we are trying to do is create a new pathway to opportunity for people for whom the conventional sort of degree route is not a good fit, either because they don't have the time, they don't have the resources, or they just want to get to work as soon as possible. And so that's why we created Breakline, because there should be more than one pipeline to opportunity. We as a society, we should really want to invest in lots of different avenues to help people make the best match for themselves in their professional lives.
And in the 8 or so months that you've been in operation, nearly 100 veterans have already gone through your program. What have been their experience afterwards? What have these vets gone on to do?
Yeah, Justin, it's been so exciting to see our veterans succeed in the workforce. We have graduates who are now at PayPal, at Medallia, at Box, at Facebook, at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and many other companies as well. And they've really gone on to a broad array of roles, everything from product management to financial planning and analysis, to data analytics, to customer trust, to cybersecurity. And what's fantastic about it is that the companies are embracing these veterans in their roles. We have I'm thinking about one graduate in particular who took a lead product management role at a top technology company here in Silicon Valley, and she started reporting monthly to the CTO almost within a month after joining the company. And so it fills us with gratitude and admiration for our veterans and also for the employers who are recognizing this as a talent arbitrage opportunity and they're jumping in to get involved and to get access to this tremendous talent.
That's great. I mean, one theme that's come up in the last 50 or so interviews has been that there is some education required for a lot of employers, and since it's, I believe, less than 1% of the population serves in the military, there is, on the one hand, there's the veil of ignorance for the veteran of not knowing what careers await them. But that's reciprocated on the employer side, where a lot of them don't know how to make sense of a veteran's background or how best to utilize them. And so it also sounds like one of the roles that you're playing is not just providing that training for the veteran population, but you're also educating the employers about the extreme value that these candidates bring to the table.
Well, I would characterize it a little differently, actually. The partners that we have, these are companies like PayPal and Andreessen Horowitz and Hewlett Packard and BMC Software and LifeLock. they already recognize the tremendous talent in the veterans community. They just want to accelerate the rate at which they're hiring people, and that's where Breakline comes in to become a partner to help them access the tremendous expertise and the work ethic and the integrity and all the other wonderful strengths that veterans bring to the table. They want to access that, and they want to accelerate their hiring pipeline. And so we're in a position to help them do that. And it's really a pleasure for us to be able to do that. And it's a privilege.
That's great. And so for the people that you've worked with or the people that you're starting to work with, what are some common backgrounds for the veterans who work with Breakline?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Justin. And this is something that I am so excited about. What we do is we look at strengths rather than your functional area or your specific skill set. We're much more interested in your macro strengths. And so we care about things like intellect, problem-solving agility, collaboration, leadership, and grit. And we have constructed our application process in such a way that we can probe really deeply on those areas and more. Because we want to make sure that we are admitting people into our programs who really have a great shot of being hired either by our partners or by the industry in general. We don't want to waste anybody's time or money. We're really looking for people who we think have a great shot. And that type of profile comes in lots of different packages, which is what I think is so exciting. We've had a combination of officers and enlisted service members. We've had a really good mix of men and women. We've had people from every single branch in the military, from lots and lots of different functional backgrounds. Sometimes there are situations where somebody's functional expertise translates directly into their private sector role. We've seen this happen with cybersecurity and other roles. But other times it really just comes back to what do you really enjoy doing? And then it's about finding the right employer who can help offer a role that feels like a great fit. And so we don't see any patterns. It's not like we'll say this is just for JMOs or this is just for enlisted service members. It's really about those 5 core strengths, and we work hard to find them in a variety of different communities, and we've seen lots and lots of people succeed.
You know, originally I was planning on diving into some of the things you've learned in the last 8 months, and I do want to get to that in a little bit, but my curiosity is getting the better of me, and I'd love to just learn more about the specifics of what the programs look like. And so it sounds like there's 2 programs coming up, Breakline Tech and Breakline Finance. And I'm wondering if it makes more sense to maybe tackle one of these, because what I'd love to learn more about is, you know, when this starts, how long it lasts, what it looks like what they're doing during this, and then also what the application process looks like. So I'm not sure if they're similar enough to tackle them both together, or if we should start with one and then go to the next.
Well, let's start with Breakline Tech because that's the first one that's coming up. This is a 1-month program, so it's 4 weeks. It's extremely intensive, full-time, here in Silicon Valley. It's starting on February 21st, and it will run through March 17th. This program is physically hosted by our 4 core partners, Andreessen Horowitz, PayPal, BMC Software, and LifeLock. The veterans will move as a cohort from one partner to the next over the 4 weeks, and will also go and visit lots and lots of companies within the Bay Area, really cool and interesting companies like Medallia and MuleSoft and Box and many others. And the curriculum is again, it's really driven by our goal of employment. And what we did was took a step back and asked ourselves, what is getting in the way? What is creating this gap? And it turns out that there are three gaps when it comes to veterans who are looking to transition. The first is knowledge and skill set. The second is communications and culture. And the final one is professional network and mentorship. And so we created the Breakline curriculum to specifically address those 3 gaps. The curriculum itself has three parts to it. The first is classroom-based learning. And here we give our participants what's essentially a business education sprint. We expose them to accounting, finance, marketing, operations, strategy, all of the different functional areas of a company and how those particular areas work together. But then layered on top of that, we invite in lots and lots of executives from our partnering companies and from the industry more generally who talk about their companies, what they look for in top talent, the trends that they see coming down the road for the industry, their own career paths. And that really helps our participants try on both these companies and also specific roles, try them on for size and sort of test them out, evaluate for themselves if that's going to be a good fit. The second piece of the program is a project. So we work with our core sponsors to create 4 projects for the program. Those are current business challenges. And the project serves a number of different purposes. One, it allows our participants to apply what they're learning in the classroom, and it really helps them internalize and crystallize those insights and lessons. But it also gives our participants something really practical to talk about in an interview situation. So, Justin, you mentioned that less than 1% of our population has ever been in the military. And you see that with hiring managers and recruiters. And so the project ends up giving our veterans something to talk about with those recruiters when they're being interviewed. It helps them get on the same side of the table and get aligned on a topic that they both know and understand. And then the final piece is professional networking and mentorship. So those projects all come with mentors attached, mentors from our core sponsoring companies. And we also provide lots and lots of opportunities for professional networking. We literally build it into the program. So we'll go as a group and visit many companies in the Bay Area. And they'll host us for happy hours and discussion panels, tours. And so by the end of this one experience, our participants will have up to 100 contacts, people who will actually return their emails, return their phone calls, and who are really invested in helping them with this next phase of their careers. So that's how we lay it out. And again, it really comes back to the objective of employment. And it's also about making a really informed decision. So our participants will get to see inside literally dozens of companies. And by the end of that experience, you'll know what the right environment is for you, where you feel the most energized, where you're compelled by the problems and the opportunities, where you feel great about the culture. You're making an informed choice, and the same is true for our corporate partners. And so we think that this approach is a win for everybody involved.
A lot of what you're saying resonates, and one thing that I've found in my own experience and has come up on these interviews is the power of internships. And I know while I was at the GSB, having Wednesdays to go visit companies and having breaks to be able to spend a week with the company, even in 1 week, you could learn so much about, look, this is not the right fit for me, or I don't like this company's size or this industry or this functional role. And I never found a way to really vet a career potential other than that direct experience, that hands-on, just getting the feel of what it's like to be in a location and around those people. And so what I really like, first of all, is that you've found a very efficient way to pack in 4, 5, 6 of these different experiences of just getting that experience and meeting people and trying to get as much data as quickly as possible to make that informed decision. So I really like that. And then, one of the most cited challenges that veterans talk about on this show is networking and really establishing that civilian network. And so this also seems like a very efficient way to just establish deep roots. And I know how valuable personally that's been for me. And I know how valuable other guests on the show have talked about how those contacts are the ones that make the biggest difference in learning and finding opportunities. So I I like all of those aspects. I'm wondering, so for Breakline Tech, about how many people do you expect to be starting in February? I'm just trying to create this mental picture of how many other veterans they'd be working with in this group.
Yeah, so we are about 2/3 of the way through the admissions process for that program, and we're expecting to have between 30 and 35 participants in that program. We, for us, it's really not about filling a classroom. It's certainly not about, it's not about the numbers. It's more about fit. We really want to make bets on people who we think have the greatest potential to find a great fit within tech, and so we're really careful about screening our applicants because we don't want to waste anybody's time or their money. We want to make sure that we're able to give our participants an excellent experience, and so that's our approach. But and then we keep our class sizes small so that we can give our participants a lot of personalized attention. We look at everything from their resume to their LinkedIn profile. We work with them on interview prep. We work with them on their elevator pitches and their personal brand. And that takes a lot of time and attention, and we want to be able to give our participants that resource because it matters so much and is clearly an important component of helping them succeed in the job process.
That's awesome. So I'm realizing, at least by the time this interview is published, episode 40 won't have been released yet, but it's with a lady, Annie Taft, who went through the Stanford Ignite program, and they have a veteran-specific program. And I remember in our conversation, there was part of me that thought like, oh, why would I want to go through this program with a bunch of other vets? And she made a really good point of how that is just a great network to establish and how much it enhanced her education of being around other vets who are learning rapidly as well. And so as I think of the 30 to 35 vets that you'll have in your cohort in February, I think that's such a great way that where you're blending the high-tech networking and establishing those contacts, but doing it with other veterans with similar backgrounds and similar values. I just think that's the best of both worlds and would really help in that learning process.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Justin, and it's been so neat for us to see that that sense of community really emerge with our participants. They get together, they do mock interviews with each other, and they also just get together to have coffee or drinks or whatever it is. Because they have that sense of shared experience through Breakline and also through their service to their country. And it's been really, really wonderful to see those friendships emerge. And they really have been an important part of getting started in a new industry. And I think it's a great element of the program as well.
And I love the laundry list of things that you mentioned about LinkedIn and resumes and things like that, because it seems like one-stop shopping, and a lot of the items that come up on the show of things that people need to do for that transition. Again, it seems like you're really checking off all the boxes to make sure that by the end of that month, they are ready to just be shot out of a cannon in the direction they want to go for their career.
We really spent time thinking about all the different things that get in the way and that get in the way of that goal of employment. And it's surprising actually how small those issues can be to trigger a no. And so wherever possible, we work with our participants to make sure that they are positioning themselves in the strongest and most favorable light to achieve this goal of employment in tech.
And so at the end of this month, so let's say come March 17th, what does that ending look like? And based on the candidates who have gone through, do you have a sense for the success rate in terms of people that would have a job either at that date or a couple months afterwards?
Yeah. So all of our programs end with interview round robins with our sponsors. And so you literally start the interview process while you are still in the program, and that's by design. We had our first person was hired within 2 weeks of the program wrap, and one of our veterans was just hired about 2 weeks ago. She had received other offers along the way, but held out for the one that she really wanted, which she received 2 weeks ago. So there is a span of time, and it comes down to each individual and their interests, their objectives, the different constraints and pressures that they might have. We have some people who were just very, very focused. They knew exactly where they wanted to be and exactly the type of role that they wanted, and they just zeroed in on that from day one of the program. And those people were hired quickly. And then we had others who wanted to really explore broadly and wanted to get to know many companies at depth, and that just takes more time. And so it comes down to each individual and your own sort of strengths and goals and willingness to investigate before you make a decision. But in general, I think that people can certainly expect offers within 3 to 6 months of the program. That's the broad trend that we've seen.
I'm curious, has anyone been through the program so far that was on active duty, like either maybe taking a leave or anything like that, or are these people who have already transitioned?
It's a combination. So I think that the ideal timing is someone who is transitioning within 3 to 6 months. And that's because any further out, it gets hard for companies to pay attention because they're not planning that far in advance. But we have had exceptions to that. So we'll take people, if we think that somebody is truly outstanding and will raise the bar for everybody else in the class, and that person has a year or even more left on their contracts, we will take a few people like that. And we have done it in the past and will continue to do it because it's in the best interest of everybody in the program. On the flip side, we've also taken people who transitioned out a couple of years ago, and that's because I've seen a pattern of people. It's a vulnerable time, right? When you're leaving the military and you're thinking about your first role, and I've seen lots and lots of people who have taken the first opportunity that crossed their paths because it meant financial security and stability. And it sounded like it would be good enough. And then you get into that role and realize pretty quickly that it's not a good fit. And so we wanted to make sure that Breakline could be a resource for those individuals as well. People who went after that first opportunity and realized it wasn't a good fit and wanted to pivot again.
And so let's talk about the application process for Breakline Tech. So first of all, I'm assuming that maybe the prerequisites for this is that someone's generally interested in technology, startups, and the San Francisco Bay Area. Is that kind of an accurate starting point?
So we're looking for people who want to be in tech on the business side of tech typically. They don't have to be in the Bay Area. So we have graduates who have taken roles in other locations, and this ends up being a really great win for many of our companies as well, who have headquarters here but have distributed operations across the United States, and end up really wanting top talent who would like to live in other markets as well.
Before we get into like what the application process looks like, if someone is listening and this is getting them excited, what are some signs that this might be the right program for them? And is there any counterexamples of signs like, hey, maybe this might not be right for you if some set of criteria is true?
Yeah, so signs that it's for you if you're really interested in the tech industry and but you're not quite sure how to break in or where to start or what company or role might be right for you. If you love being in a fast-paced learning environment, so you jump into those environments and you're working hard, but there's something exciting and compelling and fun about it. If you are a tinkerer, we look for people who are kinesthetic learners, who like to build, who have taken apart their toaster ovens or their computers or their washing machines or their cars and put them back together. We love to see people who tinker and build. And if you're excited about trying a new type of approach to career transition, if you feel like the conventional pathways are not a good fit for you because they take too long or they're too expensive or you're not really learning what you think you need to learn to succeed in this industry, that could also be a sign that Breakline is for you. In terms of red flags, A, you're not interested in this industry, I think is probably number one. B, you know already that that you want to go through a lengthy degree program of some kind as your primary avenue for transitioning out of the military. And that continues to be a very good choice for some people. Then Breakline is not for you because this, our goal is to have the most effective and most efficient route to your post-military career. This is not about taking years to kind of decompress and relax and learn, which is a really nice thing about degree programs. That's not our approach at all. So I think that those are some signs of why Breakline might be for you, and also signs that this might not be the right path.
Awesome. And could you take us through the application process for Breakline Tech as well as the cost associated with it?
Yeah, so the Breakline Tech tuition is $475. And again, for us, the tuition is really about ensuring skin in the game. This is a tough program. It's intense, it's rigorous, it's fast-paced. We need to have participants who are really invested and committed, and that's why we charge that tuition. Should that be a financial hardship for anyone, we encourage them to reach out to us directly. The application process itself is multifaceted. We require a resume. We require answers to multiple essay questions, and also a sort of data-driven application itself. We require multiple references and up to 2 interviews for each applicant. And I'd say that we really, really pay close attention to the application. We pay close attention in particular to the essay questions and to the references and to the interviews. And we're looking for people who really want this opportunity and who have demonstrated superior performance over time. And so I certainly encourage any of your listeners, if this strikes you as the right opportunity, then certainly go for it, but put your all into it. It's not the type of thing that you can dash off in an hour. It will take some time. And we're looking for people who are willing to make that investment.
I don't know how to say this without sounding like a cheesy QVC commercial, but I really cannot believe that that's $475. That is such an incredible value for just investing in one's career. And yeah, I'm very, I was thinking, high thousands, if not low tens of thousands of dollars for a program like this, because I know there are a lot of other institutions out there that charge a lot of money for that level of experience. And so I think it's great that you're providing that service. And I do also agree that it's necessary for anything like this to have someone's skin in the game, to not do it for free, to have some sort of financial investment. But I think that that's an extremely good value.
Justin, well, thank you so much. And there are a couple aspects to that I think are important. One, we did this on purpose because we really want admission to Breakline to be about merit. You put your finger on the issue that education in the United States is becoming way too expensive. And we already have the data. We know that high potential people from low or moderate income backgrounds cannot afford it and they opt out. And that means that we're missing millions and millions of incredible people who do not go through that conventional pipeline. We want Breakline to be accessible to everyone and have it based on merit rather than socioeconomic circumstances. But then secondly, the reason why we're able to afford that very, very low tuition is because our partners step up. So our corporate partners cover the cost of this program, and we would not be able to do it without their support and their investment. So we are incredibly grateful this year to PayPal and to Andreessen Horowitz and BMC Software and LifeLock in particular, because they have made this opportunity possible for veterans, and we just couldn't be more appreciative of their support.
That's great. And I want to move on to Breakline Finance, but last question on Breakline Tech was, what is the deadline for the application?
The deadline is December 6th, and I know that some of your listeners might be hearing about this just days beforehand. And so if anyone is interested in applying, just reach out to us and we'll be able to give you a couple of extra days if you heard about it on Justin's podcast.
Great. Well, let's transition to Breakline Finance then. How does this compare to Breakline Tech, and similar set of questions around what the experience is like?
Yeah, so Breakline Finance is a very different type of opportunity. Breakline Tech, we are looking at a broad expanse of roles, both across functional areas, but also across tenures. With Breakline Finance, which is sponsored by First Republic Bank, we're actually trying to zero in more on people who are at the very early stages of their careers. So we're particularly interested in junior enlisted service members for this opportunity, E4s, E5s, E6s. And so First Republic Bank is really excited about hiring veterans. They're looking for veterans who want to begin their careers at First Republic. And the opportunity itself is a 1-week program. We're charging $75 for that program, again, making it extremely affordable. And the idea is that it's specifically for people who are curious and interested in careers with First Republic Bank and in the financial services industry more broadly. And so this will be a 1-week, very intensive, condensed experience. We will work with our participants ahead of time on their resumes, their LinkedIn profiles, and their elevator pitches so that when they come into town, they are ready to jump in and get going on all of that. When they're in town, we will have a very, very condensed experience that focuses on communications, culture, design thinking, leadership, innovation, and we'll have a lot of sessions that are taught by executives from First Republic and from the financial services industry more broadly. So it will be very hands-on, again, a very professional experience, and it's well suited to people who are interested in transitioning into the financial services industry.
What was the dates for that and the deadline for the application?
Yeah, so the program itself will run from May 1st to May 5th here in San Francisco, and the final deadline will be toward the end of January.
Great. I'm just making a note of that. And for listeners, all of this information will be in the show notes as well. So if you're driving, no need to get in a car accident over that, trying to write this down. And I'm assuming the application process is somewhat similar?
Yes, the application process is similar. So we're requiring a resume, essay questions, plus some data on you and your professional experience to date, multiple references, and an interview.
One other question on these two programs, and I know that you're less than a year old, but I'm wondering if you anticipate, so if someone is listening, maybe they're on deployment, maybe they're not able to make those specific dates, when do you anticipate the next of these events will be held?
So we will always run these two programs at roughly the same time of year. We're also working on a healthcare version and a retail version as well. So we will continue to expand out by industry and also by geography. So right now we physically run these programs in the Bay Area, but we're expanding across the U.S. as well. So the best way to stay in touch with us is through our website, which is breakline.org.
Perfect. And I wanted to ask just a couple of questions around anything that you've learned through this process and through working with veterans. And so I'm wondering, in your experience with veterans so far, let me start with something easier. What strengths in general do you see veterans bringing from their military background into the workforce? And the flip side of that is, what are some of the weaknesses that you see that they're going to have to work to overcome?
Yes. So, the strengths are so many. People often talk about the leadership and the management and the integrity, and all of that is true. I think beyond that, the drive toward goals, the drive toward outcomes, the drive toward impact and results, that's really, really important to industry. People who get stuff done. You don't just talk about it, you actually go and do it. And I think that this is a huge strength for veterans. And beyond that is the work ethic itself, really being willing to run through brick walls to achieve the outcomes that you need on behalf of yourself and your teams. It's a wonderful thing that veterans bring to the table. And finally, a learning mindset. So, I can't tell you that I don't think I've ever worked with a veteran or an active duty service member who hasn't had an experience where they've stepped into a role where they had no idea how to do what they were being asked to do, and they had to learn really, really quickly and on the job, and the stakes were so much higher than they are in the private sector. And so I think having that learning mindset, being able to very quickly get up on those learning curves, serves our veterans so well in the private sector, because this is just another learning curve. Jumping into that first role is just another learning curve, and you will be able to get the hang of it quickly because you've done it before. So those are a bunch of the strengths that I see over and over again. In terms of gaps, I think there are a couple that I see. The first is the communications and culture gap. And really this is about being able to tell your story and being open about what you achieved. So many of our students are incredibly modest and really struggle with turning the spotlight on themselves. They have always wanted it to be about their teams and their colleagues, and it's hard for them to come out and to tell their own stories. And so we really encourage our participants to keep in mind that they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for their families and for the people who love them and who are counting on them to succeed in this next phase of life. And so that's one, is being able to tell your story in a language and in a way that recruiters and hiring managers understand. And then the second one is to keep in mind that business is done through relationships, and these are relationships that people build and that matter over the long term, and it really does become about your network, and not in a cheesy way, but in a way of who will care enough when they see your name in their inbox or they get a voicemail from you, who will care enough to return that, who wants to help, who wants to be a part of what you're doing or what you're thinking about. And so kind of, I've heard lots and lots of our students say that something to the effect of, networking in the military is a dirty word, or it's kind of like a cheesy thing to do. But in business, relationship building is absolutely core. And so shifting that mindset in that direction is another thing that we work on with our veterans as well. Just one last thing, both of those gaps, Justin, I think that the silver lining there is that these are things that can be learned, and they can be improved on. This is stuff that's attainable, and it just takes a little bit of practice.
That's great. And I think that's really sound advice and spot on. I had a couple just rapid fire questions I thought I'd throw out. And obviously in your work, you go extensively into resumes and to LinkedIn and to interview prep. But I was wondering if you had one piece of advice for someone listening about how to improve or prepare their resume. What's something that comes to mind that you'd want them to know?
Keep it to one page. I know this is hard, especially if you've had a lengthy career, but keep it to one page. Hiring managers and recruiters spend maybe 5 minutes looking at the resume on average. They won't go beyond one page. And so you want to make sure that you are presenting yourself in a format that they can digest. And then beyond that, really focusing on data, on outcomes, on how you have achieved your goals, and trying to use language that will be familiar to hiring managers and recruiters in the private sector. So staying away from acronyms and stuff like that that will just kind of fly over their heads. Those would be my quick core pieces of advice on the resume.
I think that's so true. Having looked at so many resumes, my gut feel is that the degree of someone's qualifications is inversely proportional to the length of their resume. And generally, any time I see a resume that's 2 or sometimes even 4 pages, it's just always, it's like they didn't have the discipline to do the work for me and to distill all of their experience into one succinct page. And on the other side, when I see that one page that's just very clean and crisp, it generally that quality comes through as well in the quality of their work experience. And I also agree that like numbers, anything concrete, that they were the number 1 of 13 junior officers, or that they, and this can be hard, but trying to work with your command environment to get numbers of, hey, I improved operational efficiency by 170%, or we reduced costs to the command by 30%, anything to make it quantitative, because your specific military experience might be difficult to understand, but numbers and rankings never lie.
That's very true. And I have a couple of quick recommendations for LinkedIn profiles too.
Yeah, that was actually the next question, was what the advice about LinkedIn profiles specifically.
Okay, good. So the first and the most important is add a picture to your profile. You have to have a picture on your profile. It's something you get something like 14 times the number of page views if you have a profile picture. And unless it's really really important for you to be anonymous online, use a picture of yourself. I have had lots of people who have used pictures of like knives or, even sort of like generic environmental pictures or something. It's important to actually use a picture of yourself. People like to have a sense of who they are considering and evaluating. And then the second thing is, do not do blind invitations. So don't just send an invitation to somebody that you don't know with no explanation. This happens to me all the time, and I always ignore these invitations. And LinkedIn has data on this, but they almost never get accepted. If you're reaching out to somebody who you aren't already connected with, you need to actually put an explanation in the invitation of why they should be interested in connecting with you. Otherwise, you have almost no shot, so it's not even worth it. So those on the LinkedIn profile, those are my first 2 pieces of advice. And then all of the other stuff that you see on the resume also matters on LinkedIn. So if you can keep it to stuff that you've actually achieved, if you can have it be data-based and fact-based, if you can have it be like relative performance where you clearly stand out amongst your peers, all of that is really good advice for your LinkedIn profile as well.
I love that. And yeah, I have a negative reaction when I get that request from someone I clearly don't know. It's just pointless. And occasionally when someone passes through and they make that connection and then they ask, hey, could you introduce me? It's like, no, I don't know you. I can't introduce you if I have no context for who you are. Second to last question would be, if you had one piece of advice to give on how to improve in the interview process. I know that you've spoken about this briefly already, but anything else come to mind about how to better come through in an interview?
Yes, definitely. So here, I think it's very important to work on something that we call your elevator pitch. So this is basically your 30-second spiel about who you are, what you've accomplished, and what you intend to do in the next phase of your career that is intended to kind of catch the eye and catch the attention of the listener. And the interview is a really perfect example of where this would fit. So the question of, so tell me about yourself. This is where that elevator pitch would come in. And so this is something that you need to carefully craft, and you need to practice it over and over and over again. This is so important that you get it right. The reason is that in an interview situation, the interviewer decides within the first 5 minutes whether or not they like you and whether or not they think that you're a fit for the role or for the company. And then everything that happens after that first 5 minutes just reinforces them one way or another. So you want to get going on the right foot in the interview situation because the first 5 minutes are the most important in the entire conversation.
Awesome. Well, I always like to leave the last question to turn it over to you. I know that I've asked a lot of very specific questions, but sometimes there's that itching thing that you weren't able to say that you wanted to share. So knowing you have an audience of active duty and recently transitioned veterans listening, is there anything else you'd want to say to them or any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, there's a veteran in our community. His name is Brett Camoli, and he runs a company called Asurian. And he gave this talk once to a community of veterans, and he said, just aim high, aim way higher than you think that you should, because you have so much to offer, and we need your expertise and we need your talent in the private sector, and we'd be lucky to have you, but you've got to go for it. Don't let this be the moment in your life or in your career where you settle. You've got to go for it. And so let this be the time when you really shoot for the stars, because you've earned it. You've earned that opportunity.
Awesome. Well, Bethany is at breakline.org. A reminder for those interested, applications are due December 6th and end of January. And regardless of whether or not you can make that, check out breakline.org. It is a very efficient way to jumpstart your transition. Bethany, thank you so much for your time.
Justin, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Surface.
Thanks for listening. Before you go, 3 important announcements. First, if you believe in what I'm doing and believe in supporting veterans in their careers, please help me spread the word. The best way I know to do that right now is by taking 18 seconds to write a review on iTunes. It would mean a lot. Second, based on my interviews, I'd advise any and all veterans to look at servicetoschool.org and the American Corporate Partners. Both are completely free for veterans and give you a lot of great resources for your education or professional life, respectively. Third, there are a ton of other great interviews, resources, and data at beyondtheuniform.io. Check it out, share it with your friends, and drop me a line if you have any feedback, because I'd love to hear from you. Thanks, and see you on the next interview.